All right, welcome everybody. This is the third of our community tour series. We're trying to give an inside look on tools, practices, and processes that you wouldn't necessarily know about some of your favorite communities. And so today we get an inside look at the Alteryx community. And I'm really excited to present to you Kylie Firmin. Her presentation is awesome, so I'm going to turn it over to her and we'll do questions when she's done.
Oh, you're hyping me up. Hopefully I can meet the demand. So hi everyone. Like it was mentioned, my name's Kylie. I am the program manager of the Alteryx community, and without further ado, let's get started. I do have a little for funsy question halfway through, just as a heads up. So love to see your guys' chat responses to that. And when I say in the middle, it's actually probably the next slide. Yeah, that'd be the one. So to start off, I wanted to get into a bit about myself. I am the program manager of the community platform. I put in air quotes that I'm actually the product manager because more closely resembles a product manager role. I look after the development cycle, working with our development team and our vendors to support our engagement and content teams in the launch and support of new areas, new functionalities, and new features. We are kind of their biggest supporter in that every functionality we build is aimed to support the user's experience as well as our other teams, both internal and external. I have 4 years of experience on the community. Alteryx is my first community. I joined Alteryx fresh out of college, and I started in operations and admin work, specifically focused around product idea boards. I was the main communicator between the product team on the Alteryx communities, or the product team of Alteryx and the community team's idea boards. They had been kind of left in a state of disrepair, so I had been the main person rebuilding that entire process, working with the various teams to get those products ideas back onto the roadmap and back in front of the various associates. I then moved into development under the support of, at the time, the head of development and operations, Trey Waddell. She was my main mentor. She kind of gave me everything and taught me everything I needed to know about being a PM and the Alteryx community. She and my other main mentor, Jeff Stroud, had about 20 years of Khoros experience, which is our main platform. My little for funsy fact to also go into is that I am an avid traveler. I enjoy trying to get out of the country at least once a year. I've been doing it since I was 14. I am very privileged in that front. And I want to know everybody's favorite places to go while I tell everyone about the funny little dude who's in the picture, because as you guys probably noticed, that's not me. That is my, I call him my plushie. His name is Emmett. Because I get really worried and nervous about taking pictures of myself while I travel, I take pictures of him instead. And so that's why I have him there, is that he's actually my main travel buddy. Margaret, I just went to South Korea. That is actually where this picture is taken, is in Busan. Japan, also an awesome option. I've never been to Italy. How did you get to Antarctica? I need to know. That's on my list. That's fantastic. Oh yeah, I figured you probably recognize that background. So this is one of the cultural villages in Busan. It's very like scenic, and I was very excited about getting there to take a picture. I took a train from South Korea, or from Seoul, to get there. Oh, Ireland. That sounds awesome. These are all such cool places. Everybody's been to such cool places. We need to go all travel together. But yeah, Leandra, we all need a vacation. But it's good to hear. Excited. Oh yeah, manager cruise. But without further ado, probably should get into the meat of the presentation. So that's a bit about me. Quick agenda for where we're going to be going over this. I'm going to start with a background on the Alteryx community, go a little more in depth on how it's built, its history, and our team. Then we're going to get into the user groups and the group hub system that they're built on, as well as talking about some of the customizations that are built into it. I'm going to touch on our international communities, give some fair warnings and pros and cons about having an international community and what you should consider before launching it. And then finally, we'll close out about customizations and out of the box and when you should consider one over the other. To start, the background. Like I mentioned, Alteryx is a community built on Khoros. We've been on Khoros for about 8 years, and we're privileged enough to have a very large team supporting us. Because we're a rather mature community at that age, we've collaborated with a lot of folks from UX designers, developers, architects, but our team also is built fairly supported in-house. We have 3 major pillars. We have our content team who looks after the entire content facilities, building out blogs, podcasts, supporting knowledge base, and helping the entire company integrate their content onto the community and creating a space for users to learn. Our engagement team is focused on exactly that, engagement. They look after the discussion boards. They also handle our moderation and supporting events and all sorts of new processes and features to get users to interact with the community more often. And then our last pillar is development and operations. Development is, like I mentioned earlier, mostly a support team where our job is to build out new functionalities for our various teams, as well as external folks such, well, I say external to the community team within Alteryx, which is our enablement team to build our academy and our customizations for our certifications. We also support our Spark team, who looks after students and educators. We looked after our AFG, who's nonprofits, a lot of other teams, as well as our product integrations. So we work with a lot of teams, but development is kind of the core, building all the new features that get launched onto the community. And then operations is analytics, admin work, anything that has to do with kind of the caretaking of the community after the new launches. As I mentioned, we're lucky enough to have a very large team. So we do have our own in-house developers that have supported us in all of our new customizations. And that's why the community is kind of the way it is. We were able to support so many customizations because we have that support and financial leadership backing and team headcount backing to actually build these customizations. So first one I want to talk about is user groups. User groups is supported by our engagement team. We have 2 associates who look after over 40 active user groups globally. And it's a volunteer-based organization where they reach out to us about creating user groups in their various countries and cities. And we assist in helping them set it up, but it is completely run by our users and led by their user group leaders who are volunteers seeking to kind of create that networking space and providing best practices and meeting other people in their various locations to engage it with about Alteryx. I'm now realizing I skipped a step. So I'm going to backtrack for a minute. I should explain what Alteryx is. Alteryx is a software analytic company that provides democratized data analytics to our users. So it allows our users to better understand what's happening with their data and use either a drag and drop or code-based system to fully analyze and evaluate their data. And then we have a bunch of additional products that we can assist people with sharing their workflows, automating them, and getting these sort of extracts and visibility into their data and better understand what's happening with the various, I say data a lot, but that's kind of what we do is data. With the data that it's working with. These user groups are areas that our users can engage with other Alteryx users to understand how they're using the product and learn kind of better best practices and how they can better optimize and automate their various workflows and systems to really save them time. So yeah, apologies for running that a little late. Probably should have started that at the beginning, but better late than never for talking about what Alteryx is. But the user groups are in support of our users, allowing them to better use the product and better reach out with each other and interact. It's purely self-service. So because we have so many, we needed to find a way that we could allow our users to really manage themselves and be successful on their own, because as awesome as our 2 associates are at running the user group systems, it's still a lot of people, a lot of user group leaders in a lot of time zones to manage by yourself. So what we did to optimize the self-service is that we moved everything to Group Hubs, which is the Khoros backend of formerly called Groups. It's a new out-of-the-box functionality that allows users to kind of control their space and have a mini community within your community. It allows for unique permissioning, unique boards and engagement that sticks purely within that space. So you can have one of every type of board that's supported by Khoros, which is knowledge base, ideas, discussions, events, and I'm missing one, but I cannot remember what it is. I apologize, but it's one of each type of board, and you have a set of governed permissions specific to that space that when joined, you get those permissions. When you leave, the permissions are removed, and the user group leaders have the ability to have closer to moderator access over their spaces based on your own preferences to control their space, create their own events without impacting or giving permissions out to various other areas, such as other event boards or other user groups. So that was the first way we automated it, so that user group leaders had a bit more control over their space. And the second is we looked at ways to integrate with various hosting systems. We currently are using WebEx, and I'll get into, or we're using, yes, WebEx. But we're looking at the Zoom integration because of the pre-built integration with Khoros that allows Alteryx to just provide a license and our user group leaders to build their events and be self-sufficient from start to end in that entire process. I added a fun little statistic that 83% of our user groups as of last year were remote or hybrid option. And while that will lessen in the future, it's still a lot. It's still an option you're going to need to consider because especially depending on how you built your user groups, a lot of them are going to have some sort of hybrid option. So considering how you want to set up your digital format is just as important as providing your user group leaders the ability to set up a physical meeting location. So you get a user group. It's pretty much exactly what happened is that we were able to give out user groups, but using also our data, we were able to identify if a user group is struggling, which gets into my next point, kind of things you need to consider when dealing with self-service of user groups especially. So again, it's awesome to empower your users with permissions. You can provide them the ability to control their own blogs. That was the one I was missing. With their own blogs, events, forums, easy ability to control their own space and make their own events without you needing to really moderate them. And also we were able to use existing integrations. Group Hubs is out of the box from Khoros. And I'm going to hit on this again later in our customization section, but out of the box, if you can, is the better way to go at development in these spaces. I will hit on more why, but for now, I'm just going to say it is. And it's important to consider that if you can get it out of the box, it's the better way to go. And in this case, we were able to get it out of the box. We were able to get a full system of built-in capabilities, including live streams, location maps, invite functionalities, and be able to launch it without much need from our development team to support that initiative. However, data collection on Group Hubs is a little tricky. And as I was saying, data is important. You need to know if your user groups are succeeding or failing, if they need support or if they need to be archived. I made a point of saying 40 plus active user groups because those are actually active. They have regular meetings. We have criteria set for them that they need to meet to be still considered a user group. We regularly archive our inactive user groups because it's important for your users to see that the spaces are cared for. As a point was made to me, how often have you gone to a community and found an inactive or really dead user group, and that kind of turns you off? It's important to use that data to understand what you need to do with your user groups. However, sometimes getting that data is tricky. Right now, we're facing an issue that you can track how many people have RSVP'd, but you actually cannot see who went to a digital user group. And that is something that our team is actually looking at trying to figure out how to fix, because you do need that data. It's an important system. And so you need to consider when you're using these integrations, how are you going to get the data to see the success? Lastly, this is just a general rule of thumb of more permissions is more dangerous. You need to know that your user group leaders and user groups can be trusted. How many permissions are you giving them that you're comfortable with giving them? A good example is our community doesn't allow anyone to delete content. It's so that metrics aren't lost, data for moderation isn't lost. And one of the permissions that the user group leaders potentially can get by getting these higher permissions is the ability to delete their content. So how much do you trust them? How much have you trained them? It's important to not have to babysit your leaders, but you still have to consider how much permission you're giving a person who isn't in your organization and isn't under any restrictions that you've applied to them. So that's kind of my spiel about group hubs. I now want to move over into the international communities, because this is another interesting space that has a lot of points to discuss and a lot of interesting aspects to it that I think people don't consider when they launch one. So Alteryx actually isn't one community. We're 6. We do have 6 successful communities, 5 of which are our international communities. We currently support English, which is our default. If you go to alteryx.community.com, that's the one you're going to hit. But we also have Spanish, Brazilian, Portuguese, French, German, and Japanese. They're accessible via a language toggle in the upper. No, thank you, Ryan, for jumping on. In the upper right of our community. This is a system to allow users to interact with various members that speak their language and run into the same issues they do. So it's a good ability and space for users to really engage with each other and interact with each other. But you need to consider a lot of things when you're launching an international community. What the plus sides are, you can build a customized space. It's specific to that culture or that language or that region. It allows you to incorporate specific details about them, specific ways for them to interact with each other. And it expands your user base. As your companies start going more global, you're going to interact with people that don't speak your base language. So for me, it would be English. And you're going to have users who are not multilingual. We're lucky enough to have a lot of multilingual users, but that's not going to be the case for every single one of your users or every single one of people who want to engage. This allows you to work with those users and give them a space that they're more comfortable posting in. And your moderation team has the ability to kind of corral these specific areas and get them moderated accordingly. However, international communities have a lot of things to consider with them. And one is localization is expensive. You need to consider, how are you going to get content into these communities? How are you going to get moderators to look at these communities? How are you going to make sure that no one is breaking your terms of service, that no one is posting spam, that no one is doing these various things? Machine translation can only do so much, especially in the character languages. It's a little harder to translate that and get actually what's being said. And your speakers, your users are going to notice if you're using machine translation. They are going to know that it is not someone who's actually speaking that language, and it's going to set up an impression of that moderation team, that community team, of how they're handling this community in this space. And it's not necessarily a positive one. However, native speakers you need to hire a native speaker. They're better at handling this, but that's also another headcount you need to consider. We're lucky enough to have 2 of our associates speak 2 of these languages. So we do have native speakers to support 4 of our major communities, and we have another associate who's able to support us in our 5th. But that's still another headcount you need to consider for when you're hiring, and need to dedicate time to look after the space and be your moderator and be your content organizer. So that's something to consider when you're handling things. The second is the duplication of content versus unique content. There's no right answer on this one, but this is something you need to consider before you launch an international community, is how are you going to get your content into these international communities and updated regularly, or are you going to allow it be unique content that is not in your main community? It's in a particular example we have is our support knowledge bases. If support makes an update to one of the designer, which is our main product, designer knowledge base articles, how are we going to get that into the other languages? The other languages need that update to know what has changed, to know what their users are going to be, or what their experience with the product, and be most informed users possible, and have done a good job at supporting your users. However, there's no easy way to get that out unless you just tell everyone who's been handling the knowledge bases, your native speakers, to go update that. That's not efficient. But it's something you do need to consider. How do you handle that version control? And then unique content in particular, it's good to have unique content on your international communities, so they have a reason to go to these spaces if they are multilingual, that they have a reason to go engage with these communities. But if they post something that's really special and unique, do you bring that over to your main community? Do you translate that? And then does that lessen the value of it being in your international community? All things to consider when launching an international community. No right answers, no wrong answers, just things to address when you're looking at these communities, because a lot of leadership likes to say, oh, this is a great idea, it'll engage with our users, without thinking about the consequences or the aspects of launching these areas and how you're going to take care of it and how you're going to grow these spaces. All right, so I said I was going to talk about customization, and so that's what we're going to talk about. Customization and out of the box. First, though, I need to embarrass my developer since he's on this call. He was nice enough to let me include his picture in this slide. The picture is of Kirk, our main developer, and my favorite person to work with right now, because he looks after all of the bugs, errors, and new features I bother him with all of the time. He's also the main person supporting all our customizations and all our new features. He is effectively the backbone of development. And that's important to say because Alteryx community is heavily customized. We have 8 years of new features, new functionalities, new integrations, new behaviors across every single one of our boards. I listed a lot of our integrations below in a lot of our customized areas. I actually have a slide to include that we'll go into some of these spaces to show you guys what these customizations look like. But just to consider some of the basic ones, our class marker and TrueAbility integrations are for our certification team. Rustici is for interactive lessons, which is our enablement team. Marketo, Salesforce, anything you're going to integrate with other teams. Medallia does our survey system. These are integrations that a developer needs to support and an architect needs to look after. And these are all things that we have fully functioning in our community. I've also listed a ton of boards that have a ton of unique customizations. You'll see gallery in a little bit, but again, blogs, podcasts, we had to support our teams. We built a lot of new features and new functionalities into the community. And it has effectively become the bones of who we are, is this very customized, very unique community. But does bring out some interesting points to talk about with customization, because we have, again, the pleasure of having a developer, but that's not always the right route to go. So I wrote out a kind of bullet point list of what you should consider when you're dealing with customization versus out of the box, because customization always looks pretty and fancy, but it may not always be your right option. Out of the box should only be, or you should only do customization if out of the box does not meet the needs that you need at the time that you're launching this new functionality. And this is because out of the box has a lot of natural benefits. It's less likely to experience issues with your platform update. So because it is out of the box Khoros for us, if Khoros updates, they have built their updates in consideration of the update being made and the features and functionalities. It is significantly less likely, I should say, that anything will break with out of the box because it is your platform's own code. It also allows for you to more easily troubleshoot when there's an issue. If you're experiencing a bug, there's a much more high likelihood that it's going to be your vendor or your platform rather than necessarily your own code. You don't have to troubleshoot 2 sets of code. You can go to that support team and say, hey, we're experiencing this issue. What do we proceed with? And they have the ability to look into it. Out of the box is also able to kind of be used by a wider variety. If you're a new community or freshly launching out, you're going to need some basic standard things. You're going to need forums, you're going to need blogs, ideas. Out of the box can provide that. Out of the box can provide that well too. So you're able to use these features and successfully launch without needing that additional developer or vendor to work with you. However, it doesn't always meet your particular community's need, especially as your community grows. For Alteryx, we have a very robust certification system. We have over 10 certifications at this time. and integrations with 2 unique certification systems. We have TrueAbility and we have ClassMarker. That's an important part of our identity. We have a very robust academy system, and it's an important part of that integration that we have that working. So of course it makes sense that we needed to customize that, because nothing was going to be our needs as we improved that section of our community. And that's something we accepted when we launched that space. And we launched the ability to access these certifications. However, when you're doing customizations, you can't just do it one and done. That's not how customizations work. That's a lot of people pitch it, but it's not how it works, because every time your vendor updates, every time Khoros makes an update, your new customization may be at risk of breaking. They could be changing something in how their code is being handled. They could be changing something in how their APIs report, and you run that risk of something running into issues. Customizations will need regular maintenance, even if you do not physically change anything about them. They may need regular check-ins. They need to make sure that they're being worked on the way that they are supposed to be, that they are optimized the way that they're supposed to be, and that nothing has changed in your backend vendor to result in them being less optimized. So that's number one, is you're not ever going to be able to just launch one customization. You're always going to have to maintain it. And if you can accept that risk, if you can get an access to a vendor that you can look after your code, that you can handle these customizations, that's perfectly fine. Again, we have our own development team and a development vendor who supports our customizations. But that's something we acknowledged when we launched and went in with a headcount knowing we would need that developer. But customizations, again, has a lot of pros. You streamline your user experience. Your community looks more like yours. You don't just have to worry about using the built-in systems to change the colors and change the fonts and all that. You can tweak it and change it exactly how you want to change it to match your company's branding or your company's needs. You can also then update and not rely on your vendor to update their looks and feel and functionalities and integrations as you go. If you need to focus more on your, let's say, blogs, if you need to focus more on your blog space and your vendor is currently in their roadmap focusing on their knowledge-based systems, you have the ability to control the updates to your blogs then. You have the ability to go update as you need fit and aren't reliant on someone else's roadmap to get your items out. So pros and cons, but important things to always consider when you're going with customizations. If you get anything out of this, I hope you can get to go with out of the box, but not be afraid of customization. Out of the box will meet most of your needs, or if it can meet most of your needs, is probably your healthier option, but customization has a lot of benefits to consider when you know that out of the box isn't going to meet your needs in a timely manner. And on that note, I wanted to show off some customizations in the community. So I gathered 6 examples of 2 different board types. So I'm going to go over our knowledge base and I'm going to go over our categories. So our knowledge base is a board type that Khoros provides that gives a lot of functionalities for version control and support-based features mostly. It allows for other collaborators to come in and post. This is one of our very, very out-of-the-box knowledge bases. It is, as you can tell, a 3 by, I believe we show 15 articles at a time. There's no cover image. It's just shows a teaser and a title. And you have the standard replies, views, likes, and the ability to view the full article. If we go into these full articles, they show the author, they have the body of the content. You can ignore the red line. That's just because I'm an admin. And all the major functionalities, including the label system, recommendations, and a commenting system. Also, for admins, there's an internal noting system to note when changes are made and do version control. So this is a rather out-of-the-box knowledge base. If you go to any Khoros community, they're going to look pretty similar like this. I believe we've done some minor styling on fonts to match our branding, but overarching, this is a very out of the box. So here's a more customized one. It's moderately customized. It's still the same feel. You still have the title, the description, the views, likes. You still have the labels on the far side. It still uses the same built create an article system. But now we've moved the tiles to be larger and provide a cover image so that our various programs have the ability to advertise themselves. So that's the goal of this board, is this is our community or programs run outside of the community and giving them a space to post and sort of advertise their programs within the community without a loss of engagement, by creating a board that doesn't let people post on, which was what was happening previously. If we go into these articles, they're still going to have kind of the same feel, but we've changed a lot of the CSS on the outside to make them look nicer. So that's moderate customization. And then finally, high customization. This is the gallery. I mentioned it earlier as one of our major boards. This is technically a TKB, but you might never know it was, because we've launched a ton of features with it, with the feature carousel, filtering by label type, browsing by board type or file type, as well as sorting by system. And then when you go into one of these items, so let's go into, I always pick artificial intelligence. So this is a filter label or page that's, again, heavily customized to support Alteryx supported, Alteryx built, partner, filtering on types and recent counts again. It's this whole system to allow a more streamlined user experience, as our gallery is a market, not a marketplace, because we don't sell anything, but it is sharing this platform that allows users to share their macros, their apps, their workflows, various Alteryx supported file types with each other and with other users to further support their experience. And lastly, again, our knowledge base actual article page is heavily CS customized. The description has been changed to look very different. It now has a read more system. The labels are moved, the cover image is visible. We also have now a custom made download button so that the attachment that's added to this is downloadable via a system above the fold. So heavily customized. And this is something that when we built it, we knew it was going to need maintenance and care for. And actually, that's something we've been doing this past month, is doing maintenance on it to keep it up. But it gives our users the most streamlined functionality in this sort of sharing platform. Second is category pages. So this is our very out of the box category pages. This is our discussion boards that shows off all our discussions. It's same tiles, same hover system. If you click into one, you hit the forums. It has an activity feed, shows our top solutions and authors, kind of standard behavior for any category board that Khoros is going to support. But again, we customized it a little bit. So this is our Academies category page. It now has a featured carousel system and the ability to sort the tiles based on what they are. We've removed right rail components because they didn't have value, and updated other behaviors across the board to better kind of support our users in finding what they needed. Moderately customized still feels like a category board though. And then lastly, data science portal. This is technically a category. It doesn't look it though, because it has very big new features. The entire navigation was changed. Our recommendation system is there. We have big featured carousels for blog posts and podcasts, which this is a podcast customization we did to allow users to listen to podcasts on the spot. It allows for filtering based on discussions from across the community. You'll notice most of these are designer, but there's other ones that we self-curate into this list to provide users a confined, narrowed down view into data science items and create an access point for our users to go into each of our areas uniquely that is related to a topic. So again, technically a category. I don't think you'd know it if you looked at it though. So these are examples of customizations we have across the community and how we've kind of used them, but still keeping in mind of when we can use out of the box and rely on it as a safer and less maintenance dependent option. And I'm wondering if it's going to let me just jump to it. It's probably not. Nope, it sent me to the beginning, but that's the end of my presentation. So once this slides catch up, I do have a question slide. So I'm open to answer questions about anything about the community and our systems.
Yay, Kylie, that was awesome. I was having Khoros flashbacks. People put your questions in the chat. I have a question that just popped in my head. Um, for a team that's growing and international and all of those things, how do you guys keep track of requests for any like development changes or customizations in the community? Like internally, do you create a ticket with Kirk? Like, do people in the marketing, branch have to do that? Like, how do you guys manage that chaos?
That's a good question because it is a bit of chaos. So we are using we use Asana. It is our Kanban system. And what happens is the flow requires that we push all new requests and new features and functionalities into an intake form, which asks basic questions about each types of items that we'd be expecting. Everything from new board launches to asset updates to this is used for the community-wide, so blog posts and new engagement features or event ideas. We start there. It's then delegated out into the various teams. Our leadership reviews any new development requests typically in advance to make sure that it follows the goals of the community, at which point it's then brought into my team and I will go over the item, make sure that there's everything that it needs to be clear and concise on what the goal is. And then I will prioritize it into our sprint system, which is a monthly based sprint system, and get that release handled and communicated to our stakeholders, which at that point it's handed to Kirk for development.
And then can you speak a little bit, this is from Leandra, about how then those requests are prioritized? That's an interesting question because there's always like a product process for that. And so I'm interested to what you do for that for community.
So yeah, that definitely. Firstly, we try to make sure the requests coming in match up with our goals and OKR's initiatives for the year. An example is that we were very event focused last year. So the event systems had a higher priority than, say, our standard external requests. But then we also look at the impact it'll have on the users, the impact it'll have on the company, and the timeline that the users or the team is requesting for. An example of this is that our certification team will be launching a new certification and they'll need it out within 2 months of the ticket being submitted, at which point that typically puts it as a slightly higher priority because it is a direct impact on our users, a direct benefit to our users if we get it out. And it's an item that has a shorter deadline than, say, some of our new feature functionalities, which might have a longer deadline because they have not been directly communicated to users yet. I do lean on our leadership team, which I did see a question about who our leadership team is. Leadership in our system is our 3 heads of the 3 pillars. So it would be Neil Ryan for content team, Stacey Horadam for engagement, and then myself and Dan Minke for the operations and development sides. And then lastly, our director who kind of supports the overarching vision for the community, Karen Lazaro. So that's who leadership is for those quick reviews. And they are the ones that assist me in identifying if something is a major priority and needs to upend anything else. If it is not an urgent request that needs to be traded out and pushed into with urgency, though, we'll usually work with the leadership, the requester to get it into our sprint cycle in time that makes sense for our development team, but also makes sense for their team to launch with. It all is a balancing game of priorities. May not relate to been treated, but what are the points do you migrate your customizations from? That's a good question about migrating out of the box to customized. This is something we have done in the past, that we started with out of the box and then we moved to a customized system. It was when specifically we noticed that we were trying to identify or push new functionalities or features that were no longer within the out of the box feature. So what would happen is that we'd launch with a system, see that it's succeeding, see that it's successful, and then review and say, what would make this even more successful? What would push more users to the space? What is our new metrics for success? And if that new requirement of how to get users even more involved in the space isn't something we can support with out of box, that's when we start looking at customization. And An example is our weekly challenges system, which is an engagement system. It is a forum. It is built on a forum. It is based on everything about it is a forum. And we've noticed now that we've hit over, I think, 325 weekly challenges, that its functionalities are not quite meeting its needs anymore. They need a better indexing system. They need a better way for users to find these weekly challenges and take them later. And that is something that the out-of-the-box form cannot do any longer. And that's when we start looking at customizations. You may also have to potentially just jump straight to customizations sometimes if you are launching a new integration. So if you were based on out-of-the-box and then you're integrating it with a separate system that can do the system better, an example is like a gamification. If you start leaning on like Credly, that's going to immediately jump into customization territory. So I think, did I miss it? I see one question from Jamie, but did I miss any before I jump to that one?
Nope, you got them all.
All right.
That was really interesting to hear, though. I think a lot of people struggle with like making the leap, whether it's like buying the bigger platform or customizing out of the box. It's like has to feel like the right moment, I think. And then, yeah, like you were talking about in your presentation, then you have to be very cognizant of all the different reactions that can happen from that. And it's not always everything that you think.
Yeah, and you can pretend that you'll be able to guess everything that's going to happen, but that's not always the case. So you have to have a certain level of reaction. And Jamie, to answer your question about do we have to vet it with a PM before it's committed? I am that PM that has to vet it before it's committed. So that's why I was joking that I am a bit more of a product manager than a program manager per se. I am the one who vets the requests that come in. We treat community a lot like a product. So it adheres to a lot of the same product requirements, sprint cycles, and systems as a typical product would.
And that's why you have legitimate and cool processes and know how to prioritize. That's really, really cool. I think a lot of us aspire to be on a big team like that someday. I don't know. Let's see, are there any other questions in the chat? Yeah, good decisions. All right. Okay, and I'll have the recording and I'll send it out. We're going to invite Kylie to the Talkbase Friends Community so that we can talk to her there also. And I think I already put her LinkedIn page there probably. So thank you so much for coming today and presenting for us. And we'll see you at the next community tour, everybody.
Thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
Bye. Thanks, everyone.